हेलो फ्रेंड्स, हाउ आर यू ऑल डूइंग। मुझे आशा है कि आप सभी लोग बहुत अच्छे होंगे, डूइंग फाइन, एंड स्पेशली आफ्टर अवर previous lesson on urban health, you all must be healthier, wealthier and wise. And if you can recall, in my previous session we did say that in urban health planning is a very important component, and that is how in today's session we are going to talk and explore the various dimensions of urban planning. Friends, we know that planning is a preparation for future action. It is a conscious process of selecting and developing the best course of action to accomplish a definite objective. Urban planning is a process by which the use of land is controlled and its development is regulated in public interest. It involves both engineering and the architectural aspects. The urban planning is a technique and method of development that contributes to the organization, development and evolution of urban areas. It contributes to their urbanizing environs based on economic, legal and aesthetic concepts and conditions in order to promote the welfare of the public and quality of the environment. It deals with the spatial incidence of socio-economic development over an urban space. As Lewis Mumford defines, city planning involves the consideration of human activities in time and space on the basis of the known facts about place, work and people. It involves the modification and relocation of various elements of the total environment for the purpose of increasing their services to the community, and it calls for the building of appropriate structure, dwellings, industrial plants, markets, waterworks, dams, bridges, villages, cities to house the activities of a community as well as to assist the performance of all its needful functions in a timely and orderly fashion. Planning has both social and economic aims. Socially successful planning tends to make people's life happier, it facilitates social intercourse and has visual attractiveness. A proper spatial relationship between the communities in a region and the constituent parts of a town, compactness of development and an efficient arrangement of communication routes all results in human activities being carried out on more efficiently and less wastefully, and thus create wealth in the process. In a town or city, there are large number of activities going on, whether somebody directs them or they do not direct them. Houses are constructed, shops are opened, markets also flourish, schools and hospitals are built and roads are widened or new roads are opened. All these activities will go on whether we have town planning or not. If there is no planning, what may happen is that before roads are built, houses may be constructed and houses may be occupied before water supply and drainage facilities are provided. Thus, urban planning and town planning considers each one of these improvements and relates them to the community and the city as a whole to see what is likely to happen not only in the immediate future but over a reasonably long period of time. Actually, the urban planning is concerned with the wide range of issues and problems, such as the problem of providing the adequate housing facilities, employment, schools, parks, playgrounds, good transportation facilities and utilities and services for the increasing urban population in the large number of towns and cities which exist today and are likely to come up in the future. These problems require constant and continuous planning instead of piecemeal planning at different level. The urban planning cannot be seen in isolation. Rather, the problem of urban planning is related with the entire region, and thus there is a need for a regional approach to urban planning. It is equally important to coordinate the growth of rural areas with the future development of towns and cities to form an integral part of a balanced region. Regional approach should attempt to reduce the socio-economic imbalance between the urban and rural areas and between different parts of the country. This requires taking up of regional development plans along with preparation of the master plans for the towns and cities. Regional and urban planning therefore is closely related with each other. Regional planning basically deals with the physical planning of towns and cities and the countryside or the rural areas. It may be used with the reference to an extension of town planning. It may include general planning of resources as well. Patrick Geddes and Lewis Mumford have written about regional planning and development as a prerequisite to any social planning or town planning. The term region applies to an area with certain characteristics, often mere size, by virtue of which it is adopted as a suitable unit for some particular purpose of business and administration. It is also an area which is homogeneous with respect to some particular set of associated conditions, whether of the land or of the people, such as industry, farming, distribution of population, commerce, or the general sphere of influence of a city. A region in general terms is envisaged as a natural unit in contrast to the artificial unit created for administrative purposes. A town planner should be an expert in the area of land use planning. He should utilize the minimum extent of land required for the expansion of towns and thus preserve valuable land for some other purposes. Here again, a regional study would help the planner regarding the limitations in planning for the development of any town or city in the region. The present day town planner, faced with the problem of expanding our cities for locating additional houses, industries, public buildings and recreational facilities, is at the same time facing problems like shortage of farmland, ill effects of deforestation, ribbon development along highways, imbalance in rural and urban life, and so on. The urban planner has to approach the problem at the regional basis before going to the expansion of any existing town or city or building any town in that particular region. Urban planning, my dear friends, thus is a very broad concept and includes not only the planning of streets, houses and a few civic buildings, but if town planning to be effective and creative, it has to start from the village and cover the entire country. At the city level, the town planner seeks to serve the interest of not only one community or one town, but several communities individually as well as in relation to one another, and utilizes the resources of the city to the best advantage of land, optimum utilization by all the communities of that area. Urban planning takes place within a national framework. Planning gains its power through its embodiment in the legislation and regulations, which forms part of the legal apparatus which can vary from country to country. Moreover, the implementation of planning occurs through the administrative system, which again varies considerably across different countries of the world. Urban planning should not only be politically and socio-culturally feasible, but it should be environmentally, economically, technologically, physically, fiscally, that is in terms of commerce and economy, and infrastructure wise also feasible. Since the city and its environs cannot grow as fast as the growth of the urban population and human activity, urban planning is a must. Congestion and overcrowding of homes, the poverty and unemployment, the high incidence of deviant social behavior, the growth of substandard settlements and squatter colonies, the shortage of housing, lack of community facilities and public utilities are some of the symptoms of faulty planning in urban areas. When we talk about urban planning, my dear friends, it is not a new concept. So, to understand contemporary urban planning, it would be beneficial for us to understand its historical evolution. Human beings have been living on this earth for more than 1,000,000 years. But we trace the history of cities only since 5,000 or 6,000 years ago in the great river valleys of the Euphrates, the Indus and the Nile. From the historical facts, it is a well-known truth that the cities were always planned with a definite purpose in mind. It may be due to self-glorification, protection, trade, etc., and the development of city was always done as a separate agency. In ancient India, particularly during the Maurya and Gupta periods, separate urban planning and development agencies existed. The work of urban planning was performed by city council and town council along with other functions of the state. So, they were very advanced in city planning. The city council was modelled upon that of a village panchayat, and it may be assumed that it was an elected body. So, democracy at grassroots level existed even at that point of time. So, despite this being an elected body, those certain works were reserved for the control of the imperial officers. During the Gupta period, we have found evidence of the existence of town councils, and the public was also very vigilant about proper development of the city. There are quite a number of books written by ancient authors about town planning in India. They are known as Vastu Shastra. The earliest examples of Vedic town planning are available in Madurai, Srirangam and Kanchipuram, built with temples as the focal point and the concentric square streets all around at the same length. One who refers to Manasara Shilpa Shastra, that is architecture by Manasara, and Kautilya's Artha Shastra, economics by Kautilya, can appreciate this scientific approach to town and village planning in ancient India. Manasara Shilpa Shastra is a treatise on town planning and architecture and consists of 75 adhyayas or chapters. Apart from dealing with the details of Vastu Shilpa, many of the chapters describe particulars such as design of various parts of the buildings, towers, pillars, chariots, triumphal arches, jewelry, idols of gods and ceremonies connected with commissioning of the finished structures. The fourth chapter describes the investigation of the nature of different types of soils by means of several tastes such as their color, form, smell and touch. The seventh chapter deals with the planning of the village according to their suitability for the location of temples, palaces, houses, roads and other, depending upon the location of the presiding deity within the village. The 9th chapter describes in detail the different types of village plans according to their parts of the village for temples, schools, public halls and residential houses for different classes of the people. The 11th chapter deals with the formation of the cities, town and fortresses. The characteristics of cities fit for the habitation of kings, merchants, Brahmins and other classes of people. The different types of town plans evolved and practiced according to Manasara are: the first is Dandaka, second one is Sarvotabhadra, third is Nandivarta, fourth is Padmaka, fifth is Swastika, sixth is Prastara, seventh is Karmuka, eighth is Chaturmukha. You must be wondering that what a phenomenal knowledge about urban planning. That is why, my dear friends, India was known as Bharat Varsh, because the roots of not only medicine but also urban planning, rural development, you name an area and we find it in the historical understanding of our country. Coming back to Dandaka, it was a type of town plan which provides for two main entrance gates and is generally adopted for the formation of small towns and villages. The village offices were generally located in the east. The female deity of the village or the Gan Devta will generally be located outside the village and the male deities in the northern portion. In the second type of town plan, the whole town should be fully occupied by houses of various descriptions and inhabited by all classes of people. The temple dominates the village, and in the third type of town planning, that is Nandivarta, the planning was meant for the construction of towns and not for the villages. It is generally adopted for the sites either circular or square in shape with not less than 1000 houses but not more than 4000. The streets run parallel to the central adjoining streets with the temple of the presiding deity in the center of the town. Nandivarta is the name of a flower. Padmaka type of plan was practiced for building of the towns with fortress all around. The pattern of the plan resembles the petals of a lotus radiating outwards from the center. The city used to be practically an island surrounded by water having no scope for expansion. Swastika type of plan contemplates some diagonal streets dividing the site into certain triangular plots. The site need not be marked out into a square or rectangle, and it may be of any shape. The town is surrounded by rampart wall with most of its foot filled with water. Two main streets cross each other at the center, running south to north and west to east. The characteristic feature of Prastara plan is that the site may be either square or rectangular but not triangular or circular. The sites are set apart for the poor, the middle class, the rich and the very rich. The size of the sites increases according to the capacity of each of the purchased or built upon. The main roads are much wider compared to those of other patterns. The town may or may not be surrounded by a fort. The Karmuka plan is suitable for the place where the sides of the town is in the form of a bow or semicircular or parabolic, and mostly applied for towns located on the seashore or the river banks. The main streets of the town runs from north to south or east to west, and cross streets run at right angles to them, dividing the whole area into blocks. The presiding deity, commonly a female deity, is installed in the temple built in any convenient place. The Chaturmukha type of plan is applicable to all towns, starting from the largest towns to the smallest village. The site may be either square or rectangular, having 4 faces. The town is laid out east to west lengthwise with 4 main streets. The temple of the presiding deity will always be at the center of the town. The urban planning during the Mughal period flourished in leaps and bounds. Many cities like Fatehpur Sikri, Ajmer, Ujjain, Bharatpur, Banaras, Delhi, Agra, etc. clearly bears the influence of Muslim architecture and culture. However, as you know, Ujjain is a city of ancient India dating back to the 6th century BC. It also is evident from a history that a separate department existed for the construction and development works. This department was headed by the emperor himself, but it had many eminent architects, engineers and ministers as its members. In the regime of Akbar, a public works department was established for the planning and development of construction work. All the Muslim rulers had a separate department of urban planning and development. Like Romans, the Mughals too wanted to show their power and pomp by constructing monumental structures for the use of the royal families at the cost of other citizens. The city of Jaipur, built by Maharaja Savai Jai Singh II during 1720s, is one of the best examples of the revival of the Vedic principles of settlement planning on a grid pattern with strict architectural and land use controls on the main streets, residential areas planned with spatial hierarchy of chowks, which is the public squares being an interjection of main roads through a gateway leading to the main markets of the city. During the British phase, when we talk about urban planning, the main emphasis of urban planning was based on their strategic linkages to port towns for the purposes of trade and commerce, including defense. Besides these, other economic and climatic factors were also taken into account. The evolution of urban planning techniques and solutions initiated at the beginning of the 20th century to tackle the problems of urbanization were aimed towards town improvement. Functionally, they did not visualize the problem of urban planning beyond the municipal approach to development. In modern India, the first urban improvement authority was constituted as far back as 175 years ago in Calcutta under the Statute of 1794 with only limited powers. In the light of the experiences of the working of this improvement authority, in 1803, a town improvement committee consisting of 30 nominated leading citizens of Calcutta was constituted. In 1857, this committee was reorganized in the form of a board. This board had 7 commissioners, 3 nominated by the government and 4 selected by the taxpayers. In 1864, on the example of Calcutta and on the advice and insistence of the Royal Sanitary Commission, the sanitary commissions were set up in Bombay and Madras presidencies to give advice and assistance in all matters relating to public health, sanitation, etc. In the year of 1915, the famous town planner and administrator visited Madras presidency and he advised the government of India on this front. As a consequence, Bombay and Madras states enacted town planning acts on the line of British Housing and Town Planning Acts 1909. Mr. Henry Vaughan Lanchester was appointed as town planning advisor to the Imperial Government of India. Lanchester was editor of The Builder, which was a famous magazine from 1910 to 1912. In 1912, he visited India and prepared a report on planning of New Delhi as well as preparing plans for Madras. Although a large number of town planning acts were enacted in different parts of the country since then, the progress made under these enactments were very tardy. So, after independence, a fresh impetus on the front of urban planning and development took place. The Model Act prepared by the Town and Country Planning Organization got the approval of the Minister of Local Self-Government in charge of town planning in 1962. The Model Act has been supplemented further by two other legislations providing for, firstly, the land acquisition for development and planning, and secondly, for the creation of development authorities to undertake large scale development of the city and the works relating to the provisions of the life support system of amenities and services for a more humane urban environment. The town planning legislations in the stream of directional planning made the provisions for the preparation of the master plans for cities in terms of physical development of urban space for the provisions of infrastructural services. These legislations did not anticipate planning for supra-urban space extending the boundaries of the city to the peripheral areas and their elevation to the regional constellation of the city and its subsystems. The existing urban planning legislation in force in India suffers from several deficiencies. Several studies on urban planning in India indicate these inadequacies. Firstly, multiplicity of legal and judicial structures and organizations exist without establishing proper linkages among them. Secondly, the overlapping of functions and jurisdictions in the absence of suitable provisions for the coordination of their activities. Thirdly, emphasis on plan preparation and not implementation and execution. The fourth inadequacy is the inadequacy of effective land acquisition provisions. Fifth one is the legal inadequacy for checking the haphazard development, peripheral growth and ribbon development control. The sixth inadequacy is the lack of provisions for organizational setup for plan implementation, and the seventh inadequacy is the lack of public participation in real sense of their involvement. According to Amitabh Kant, familiar name, who is the Chief Executive Officer of National Institution for Transforming India, says, our urban planning machinery has not grown at the pace of the demands posed by urbanization and global technological advancements. Urban local bodies face a massive shortage of skilled and trained human resources as well as financial challenges. Furthermore, the poor quality of planning is a huge limiting factor to realize the true economic potentials of urbanization. Over the years, the country has witnessed the expansion of cities based on car-centric planning. However, the future of urban mobility and urban living needs to evolve on the back of public transportation. The cities need to be very compact and adopt a circular economy system to minimize their negative impacts on the environment. A global city like Singapore was raised through firm political leadership, a professional approach and intelligently created capacities. Therefore, it is not just important to enhance the number of urban planners in India, but to also ensure as simultaneous improvement in the quality of planning. Friends, India is transforming from mostly rural to a quasi-urban country. This poses challenges for sustainable development and at the same time presents a great opportunity for leveraging the benefits of urbanization with robust systems in place. This is a crucial time for India to leverage technology and ensure planned development that can bring in greater economic and social benefits across the country. There is immense stress on infrastructure of many Indian cities and towns along with unregulatable development. Additionally, they are facing the brunt of climate change as well as poverty. The Ministry of Finance in 2021 noted that 1 in 3 poor people is living in urban areas, which was about 1 in 8 in the early 1950s. This situation, along with projected urbanization levels, if left unplanned and suboptimally managed, may be detrimental to the society, economy and environment in India. In order to initiate interventions in the urban planning capacity of the country, it would be pertinent to delve into the aspect of recognizing urban planning as an independent discipline. This may help in nurturing quality of the present and future urban planning capacity of the nation. Friends, if you can recall, in many of our previous sessions where we were talking about different models of city development. So, when I was discussing about the ancient urban planning, many times, most of us, we compare our knowledge with the Western knowledge, and in many contexts, we subordinate our own ancient knowledge and make sure that Western knowledge becomes superior to ours. So, through this session I would like to emphasize on one aspect, that Indian urban planning traditionally, even during Vedic time, was much superior and was in absolute accordance with the requirements of the man as well as environment. So, though we study Chicago model of ecology or ecological models of city formation, I think the ecological aspect was very much kept into focus when our Vedic planners were thinking about urban planning in India. So, in this lesson or in this session, dear friends, we only try to understand the nature and scope of urban planning. And we know that urban cities are expanding. In fact, from session 1 till now, in almost every session, this point I am emphasizing that urban cities are expanding. And if this expanding cities have to be made livable and sustainable, the only way out is urban planning. In fact, this is in a way a kind of introductory aspect of urban planning. I will definitely come to you with many more sessions on urban planning. Next 3-4 sessions will be on that. But in the meanwhile, if you come across any interesting reading on Vedic urban planning or Mughal period urban planning, please do write to me at pandevini@gmail.com. And friends, I will be back very soon with another interesting aspect on urban planning. So, till then, keep planning your life, keep planning our cities. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.